Today's episode of the Canby Now podcast is brought to you by Gustafson Insurance. Business, home, and auto insurance made simple. For a free quote, call 503-266-2216.
This tax exemption eludes me like a gazelle eludes an arthritic cat.
Why can't Canby people keep track of their dogs? Like, what is...
To do that, you can't be stupid with guns.
Yeah.
That the board is saying they want to make Canby schools great again.
It feels like we've been doing this interview for years.
Inside of me was screaming.
You run for school board, you win or you die.
There's no second place. Welcome to the Canby Now podcast.
We are the best and easiest way to stay connected to what's happening in your hometown. I'm Tyler Franke.
I'm James Walton. And I'm Tyler Clausen.
After several months of studying our downtown and talking with Canby residents and business owners, Michelle Reeves of Civilist Consultants provided her findings in a lengthy presentation at the Antonia Ballroom above the Backstop Bar and Grill. Michelle is an economic strategist who has worked with cities across the country to help them revitalize their downtown districts and spur economic growth. She's a colorful and enthusiastic person, and she presents her findings in a way that is, well, much less boring than you would expect from an economic strategist who spends her time working with cities to help them revitalize their downtown districts and spur economic growth. Her report covered the good, the bad, and the ugly of downtown Canby. And really, it was too much to bring you in only one or two clips, so we did something a little different. Hope you like it.
So I just want to start with a few good things. Downtown Canby has fantastic building blocks. You have a wonderful neighborhood immediately surrounding your downtown. Do you know how many small downtowns don't have that? I want to move to downtown Canby every time I drive through the neighborhood. And you have the best smelling dentist office in America. But generally, I think people's perception was that downtown Canby in the past was maybe doing a little bit better than it is today. So there's a lot of agreement that Canby is a little bit boring and empty and quiet and sad and vacant, which is not great, but it lets us know what we need to work on. I just want to get through Canby when I'm on 9090, honestly. Like, I have no desire to spend time in your community when I'm driving through on 9090. This is not a great road. But I want to ask you, if I showed this picture to people around the country and I said, what is this building? Would they tell you that it was the flagship store of a used Lego? Is it showing me what it does? No, it kind of looks like a mortuary. Buildings are always telling stories in a downtown. So you guys seem to be telling me that you have a love of tan in downtown Canby. Like a serious, hardcore love of beige. Yeah. So I think there's a huge opportunity in the lobby area of your city hall and library. That should just be the most awesome space in downtown. It should not look like the entry to a hospital. So this is why it feels vacant and uninviting and like nobody's here, is because all of your windows are pitch black. What is this business? It's a barbershop. So you know that because you live here. What about somebody who just moved here? And the reason people are complaining about having to walk is it's a miserable walk with dark windows and beige buildings. Right? They're going to be willing to park a little farther away if we make it interesting for them. If I come in to downtown Canby from somewhere else, does it look like you guys are passionate about community? No, it doesn't, because this is what downtown Canby looks like most of the time. I can't see anyone. Community means people. I want to come into downtown Canby, and when I'm on the sidewalk, I want to feel like I'm dipping my toe in all this community love y'all have going on. It's just invisible in the downtown. And then let's look at this. How many spaces in downtown Canby have windows and doors that look like this? They're just filled with paper. Are you selling paper? Shouldn't be filled with. Who is reading these? Nobody is reading these. Terrible. You guys really do have some of the nicest sort of public landscaping of any small town it is gorgeous. I saw a group of men coming from like a business lunch commenting on the quality of the flower hanging baskets, and these were like a bunch of old guys, and like they stopped and they're like, oh, this flower basket looks great, and I'm like, who does that?
So, yeah, Reeves emphasized the need for clearer windows, more diverse color schemes, and a greater engagement between the indoor and outdoor spaces in downtown Canby. all changes that many property owners and businesses could achieve relatively cheaply and easily. The lack of activity in downtown Canby, which is equal parts perception and reality, would take more coordination between the city's economic development staff and downtown business owners. The high number of 9-to-5 service businesses is, quote, a common problem for many cities looking to revitalize their downtown corridor and can be addressed in a variety of ways, Reeves said. Reeves also praised the plan currently underway to turn the old library building into a small business incubator and marketplace, and shared several examples from other cities where such a model had been extremely successful in developing vibrant, homegrown local businesses. So what now? The question was asked more than once during the Q&A session that followed Reeves' presentation. After all, this is not the first time an experienced consultant has come to downtown Canby and offered a roadmap for economic development and revitalization. In fact, it is at least the third. The city says its economic development team will work with the Chamber of Commerce, downtown businesses, and property owners and other stakeholders to develop a plan based on Reeves' report and recommendations that make sense for Canby. Look for that to take shape in the weeks to come. Two independent efforts to recall Oregon Governor Kate Brown failed to submit the required number of valid signatures before the deadline closed on Monday. The two efforts, one by the Oregon Republican Party and one by the independent coalition Flush Down Kate Brown, faced the monumental task of gathering 280,050 signatures in only 90 days. Throughout the summer, they tabled at county fairs, including here in Clackamas County, and in local coffee shops and parks. In the end, it wasn't enough. At approximately 2 p.m. Monday, Michael Cross, the chief sponsor of the Flush Down Kate Brown effort, delivered 9 large legal-sized storage boxes of signed petitions to the Office of Secretary of State, Bev Clarno. The submission included a form attesting that the petition was, quote, complete and contained an estimated 290,000 signatures. The boxes were immediately transferred under lock to the Secure Election Division facility, where staff counted all of the signature sheets submitted. According to the Secretary of State's office, the total number of sheets submitted was 23,926. Since each sheet cannot contain more than 10 signatures, the submission fell short of the 280,050 signatures necessary to trigger a recall vote. Even if every single sheet contained 10 signatures, unlikely since many were turned in by individuals or couples who downloaded the forms online, and even if every signature were valid, virtually impossible since thousands would have been invalid due to ineligibility, duplication, and other issues, the Flush Down Kate Brown petition would still be more than 40,000 short. No submission was received from the Oregon Republican Party, but in an appearance on the Lars Larson show on Monday, Oregon Republican Party Chair Bill Courier admitted that their effort had also failed. He estimated that they had fallen short by about 8% of the minimum number, or 22,000 signatures. However, he also estimated that there were about 100,000 Oregonians whose signatures would have been thrown out due to ineligibility, which can be fixed by contacting the voter and asking them to re-sign, or who signed the Flush Down Kate Brown petition but not the GOP one. Under elections law, these two petitions could not be combined, but if a future effort consolidated all of these voters into a single petition, it would easily clear the minimum number, at least according to Courier. This fight is definitely not over, said Courier, who vowed to take another shot at a recall in the coming months. On the Flush Down Kate Brown Facebook page, organizer Tammy Hatt thanked all who had been involved in the effort. "It has been a pleasure to be a part of it," she said. "I have talked with and chatted with many of you. I have met many of you in person and had the opportunity to work side by side with many of you. It has been a true pleasure. Our efforts spoke volumes." Supporters of the recall efforts expressed the opinion that Governor Brown, along with the Democratic supermajority in both chambers of the state legislature, had overreached on a number of issues this past session, including the cap-and-trade bill, the vaccine mandate, and the Student Success Act, more specifically its funding mechanism, a new tax on certain kinds of businesses. The Canby School District held 2 community engagement sessions this past week to help inform their continuous improvement plan, which will become the basis for their application for funds through the Student Success Act. The sessions were offered in English Monday night at the Canby High School Commons and in Spanish on Tuesday at Trost Elementary School. Autumn Foster, communications coordinator for the district, thanked all those who participated in an email to parents this week. She also said, "Hearing from our community about what is needed to better support our students has been incredibly insightful. We have learned much through this process and will continue to seek out your feedback in the weeks, months, and years to come." If you are unable to attend a feedback session, the district would still love to get your feedback in an online survey that is open now through November 1st. You can find it at bit.ly/CSD input. Once the district analyzes the data, they will share major themes they've received and begin building plans for the future. They say they will also be seeking additional feedback this spring as they finalize their application for the Student Success Act fund. And this is not the only feedback the district has been collecting. In their regularly scheduled meeting tonight, the Canby School Board is set to hear the results of a poll a hired consultant has been conducting to gauge the community's support for a possible extension of the current bond rate. The current bond, which was established to build Baker Prairie Middle School 15 years ago, is scheduled to expire at the end of next year. But if the district successfully passes a new bond in May 2020 primary or November general election, they would have the ability to raise new capital for much-needed maintenance projects, security upgrades, and other improvements without raising taxes. If the school board does not wish to propose a ballot measure for next year's primary, they must make their decision by November 7th. Tonight's meeting is scheduled to start at 6:30 p.m. in the Applied Technology Center at Canby High School. The area saw a number of serious or fatal crashes this week. One of the most talked about was the fiery collision involving two semi-trucks on Interstate 5 near Woodburn Tuesday afternoon. Oregon State Police say the collision occurred at approximately 4 p.m. when a Volvo truck and semi-trailer, operated by a California resident, Gangadeep Singh, age 24, pulled to the shoulder of I-5 southbound due to smoke coming from under the truck. Singh and his passenger, 38-year-old Baljit Singh, also from California, exited the truck and discovered that it was on fire. Police say a Freightliner truck and semi-trailer operated by 51-year-old Rex Hollow Peter from Salem was southbound in the far right lane when it sideswiped the Volvo truck parked on the shoulder. The Freightliner caught fire and came to rest, blocking all southbound lanes of the freeway. Both commercial motor vehicles ultimately burned after the crash. Hollow Peter was transported by air ambulance to Legacy Emmanuel Medical Center in Portland for serious injuries. Both Singhs were outside their truck at the time of the collision and were uninjured. Hollow Peter reportedly survived with severe burns over more than 50% of his body. Nicknamed Scarecrow, he is a beloved member of the Solutions Motorcycle Club, which helps motorcycle enthusiasts in recovery from their addictions to drug and alcohol. A fundraiser has been set up on Facebook to help Hollow Peter in his long road to recovery. For a link, find this story on our website at cambynowpod.com. Southbound lanes of I-5 remained closed throughout Tuesday night as ODOT personnel assessed the damage to the roadway. By Wednesday morning, 2 lanes had been reopened. The 3rd lane will need to be repaved. Oregon State Police was assisted by Woodburn Fire and Medics, Aurora Fire Department, Hubbard Fire Department, Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, Salem Police Department, Woodburn Police Department, and the Oregon Department of Transportation. Other reported crashes include, the following day, Interstate 5 northbound was delayed by an early morning crash near Jervis that also involved a semi and left 1 man critically injured. Oregon State Police say that a Chevy Tahoe occupied by J. Yvonne Aguilar Damas, age 33, from California, was parked on the shoulder of I-5 at approximately 4:15 a.m. when a Peterbilt truck and semi-trailer left the roadway for unknown reasons and crashed into him. Aguilar Damas was transported by air ambulance to Salem Hospital for treatment of injuries police described as critical. The driver of the Peterbilt truck, later identified as Carl Bibo, age 57, from Riddle, received minor injuries. And a Salem man died in a single-vehicle crash on 55th Avenue Northeast, south of Brooks, Sunday. Marion County deputies say that Alejandro Terran, age 23, was killed in a rollover crash that occurred shortly after 1 p.m. Based on initial investigations and witness statements, police believe Terran was unable to safely negotiate the turn for unknown reasons. Deputies have not determined if speed or alcohol contributed to the crash.
Police Beat for the week of September 3rd through the 9th. On September 3rd at 8:04 a.m., report of a lost wallet. I don't think it was my wife, but I'm pretty sure she lost her wallet as well. So if anyone finds it, let us know. At 2:48 p.m., report of a theft of a vehicle. And at 4:46 p.m., an officer was dispatched to a 3-vehicle traffic crash. On September 4th at 1:50 p.m., an uninsured vehicle was stopped and impounded. At 3:57, an officer responded to a 2-vehicle traffic crash. At 9:39 p.m., an uninsured vehicle being driven by a suspended driver was towed and the driver was cited. On September 5th at 4:06 a.m., a driver was arrested for DUI, and 1:17 p.m., an uninsured vehicle was stopped and the driver was arrested for an outstanding warrant, and the vehicle was impounded. September 6th at 1:11 a.m., a driver with a revoked license from a previous DUI was stopped and arrested, and his vehicle was towed. And at 5:03 p.m., a great mystery was solved, and the wallet was turned into police. So if you lost your wallet, even if you're just my wife, go find it. At 5:10 p.m., an officer responded to a 2-vehicle traffic crash. So we're bringing down the number of vehicles involved. Hopefully we can keep them down. At 9:30 p.m., a witness reported a suspected intoxicated driver had just parked and exited a vehicle. Officers contacted the driver and subsequently arrested her for DUI. At 2:19 on September 7th, there was only one thing that happened the entire day. A speeding vehicle was stopped and the driver was arrested for DUI. On September 8th at 2:22 a.m., a witness reported another suspected driver who is intoxicated. Officers located the suspect vehicle and conducted a traffic stop. The driver, who struggled to exit his vehicle, fell back into it and then was arrested for DUI. Officers transported a person in crisis to a medical facility. Report of an attempted online extortion after a potential victim received threatening emails from an unknown source. That's terrifying. And officers responded to a call for assistance from a person in crisis and arranged for transport to a medical facility. September 9th at 1:08 p.m., report of theft from a parked car. 4:25 p.m., report of theft of gas from a fuel station. The suspect was located by officers nearby and agreed to pay for the gas. I mean, just do it in the first place and it's not an inconvenience. He was advised he also was trespassed from the fuel station and would be arrested if he ever returned. That sucks. There's like only a few gas stations in town left that you can go to. At 5:58 p.m., officers were called to the scene of a 2-vehicle traffic crash. 6:02 p.m., an officer responded to a 2-vehicle traffic crash and cited one driver for failing to obey a traffic control device. 9:51 p.m., a speeding vehicle with a broken taillight was stopped and the driver was arrested for DUI and controlled substances.
So I'm here with Derek Hill, president of Advantage Mortgage in Canby. I was wondering what's going on in the mortgage industry right now.
The mortgage industry is on fire right now. The big thing that's really exciting for us is that we are now an independent mortgage broker, which means that we can offer substantially lower rates and lower fees for our customers. For example, we just got a loan last week and the realtor said, "Hey, I think you should go talk to Derek at Advantage Mortgage." And sure enough, we got the borrower 3/4 better rate, and we saved him $14,000 in fees.
Cool. So where can people find you?
So office number is 503-266-5800, or they can find us on the web at findtheadvantage.com. But most people just give us a holler or they stop in.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Derek.
You bet. Advantage Mortgage, NMLS number 1770599. Derek Hill's NMLS number 50183. Equal housing opportunity.
Hey, Tyler, did you know that the world has changed in the past 20 years?
No way!
Yep, it's true. The way people shop for goods and services has completely changed since this thing called the internet started catching on.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
And yet some realtors still offer the same old services in the same old ways and for the same old percentages. Victory Point Property Group in Canby believes it's time the real estate business caught up with the times. They'll meet with you for free, explain every step of the process, give you a clear game plan, and even let you choose the listing commission.
Really? They let you choose their commission?
Really, Victory Point Property Group understands this is one of the biggest and most exciting decisions of your life, and they'll do everything they can to make sure you handle it like a rock star.
Wow, that sounds great. I'm going to check them out by calling 503-263-4700 or by visiting online at victorypointhomes.com.
You do that. Victory Point Property Group, real estate reimagined.
One of the voices that you'll hear on the Canby Conversation today is a local woman named Judy Oss. She asked us to tell you about a condition that she has called spasmodic dysphonia, a disease caused by the involuntary movements of one or two muscles of the voice box. Fortunately, it's not painful, but it does make it difficult for Judy to speak, which is why her voice sounds the way it does. Honestly, we think she sounds just fine.
Welcome back, listeners. Today I'd like to introduce you to two guests for our Canby Conversation. We have Judy Oss. She's the president of the Mark Prairie Historical Society. Hi, Judy.
Hi.
Welcome onto the show.
Thank you.
I said Mark's Prairie. We're saying Mark Prairie. I apologize for that.
Either way.
It's been said both ways over the years. And we also have Peggy Sigler. She's a longtime member of the Historical Society and all its various names that it's had over the years, and an advisor to the current group, and also a nearby neighbor here.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on as well. And we are here in the actual schoolhouse. This building is, as far as we know, around 120 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Can you start by telling us just a little bit of the history of Mark Prairie and the schoolhouse here?
As far as we know, John Mark and his family arrived in Oregon City in 1847, and they had crossed the plains via their ox team on the Oregon Trail. And then he claimed 640 acres with a cabin on it, and his son Alexander claimed an adjacent 320 acres.
Let's stop just real quick for folks that may not know kind of where we are. So we're near Canby. We're kind of in between Canby, Hubbard, Woodburn area.
Yeah, we are about 5 miles directly south of Canby.
Okay, and I believe that this does fall under a Canby address.
It is a Canby address, yes.
Back then it would have just been Oregon. Or not even Oregon yet. It would have been...
it would have been, I don't know where...
Oregon Territory.
It was probably always Canby, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Or Clackamas County.
Well, so Canby was originally Baker Prairie.
Yes, as a common name, not as a formal name. So this would have been Mark Prairie. And there were quite a few prairies coming south. Gribble Prairie is just to the east of us. So that was actually pretty typical, but then there were massive fir forests between here and what it was Baker Prairie at the time.
So the settlers are like wandering through these huge, like never-ending forests, and they finally find an area with no trees, and they're like, "This is where I'm staying.
This is it.
This is a prairie.
Yes.
And I'm going to name it after me and live here." So.
And interestingly, most of those prairies were kept open by the Kalapuya Indian bands that were in the area. They sort of managed them and maintained them. And this
either
area,
foraging or actually farming.
And fires. They also used controlled burns to keep the forest down, to keep the scrub down, so they had open areas for deer, for open areas to gather berries or roots. And this particular area is part of the Pudding River Band of the Kalapuya Indians. They were also one of the very first of tribes who were affected by disease. So they were eradicated very early, and then the Molalla Indians started moving down into this area too. So, but there were pretty established communities. The Indians at the time didn't have to leave the area because there were all the things they needed here. It was a pretty affluent society. They weren't especially nomadic.
They had the water, they had the game, there were wild berries, so they would forage or grow crops.
Right. And the creeks, both Gribble and what's the other one? Milk Creek. No, it's not Milk either. Anyway, there's two. What's the one that runs through Lone Elder? Anyway, those two creeks are really close through here, and those had salmon runs. Those had, and this was enough above the Molalla River that it was drier, less swampy, so you could get to the swampy, you could get to the Camas route. So it was a nice place to live year round.
It's really fascinating to take those kind of strolls in your imagination back into it, and it's much easier being in a building like this. The listeners can't see but this is, you feel like you step back in time coming into this schoolhouse. So there's a large open room. Do you know kind of how big the square footage is of this area?
I don't know.
No.
Yeah, yeah. So there's like a larger room that's kind of set up with some tables and chairs. There's some very much 90s looking chairs and tables as well.
Oh, no, probably 50s actually.
50s? Yeah. With that lovely shade of yellow that the chairs have. But some older wood chairs. I don't know if those are just made to look older or if those are historical.
I would say most everything out of here is from the 40s and 50s.
Okay.
When it converted from a schoolhouse, the building itself is very typical one-room schoolhouse. 3 windows, tall double hung windows down each side, a main entry on the gable end with a little, probably initially it was just a porch, and then it was enclosed as a little mudroom.
It does. On the outside, it does very much look like, if you just have even never seen one, but you just close your eyes and are told to picture a one-room schoolhouse.
Right. This is it. Yeah.
It's a kind of boxy, it's white,
Yep. And then on the end here, they actually, so we didn't really,
we'll come back to it.
Okay.
Yeah, go
So,
ahead.
this end was a play shed and wood shed that was outside, removed from the building.
So you're pointing to what's now looks kind of like a kitchen area.
Right. So that is a building that was set away from the building. They use it for playing in the winter, bad weather. They stored the wood there for the wood stove to keep the place warm. It was...
Is that still a wood stove over there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Probably a newer one than they had here in 1900.
Yeah.
But so this shed was attached here to the end to make more room when it became a community club. So
they tore down the wall, the dividing wall.
Right. Yeah. They would have opened it up by removing that end wall.
If I may say, those appliances in the kitchen are definitely 1950s era.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, I can tell you exactly what year. This was 1949.
They attached it. When they attached it. Yeah, that's awesome. So there's kind of the newer wood stove that looks like it's in use, but then right next to it, there's an older one that would actually be used for a cooking stove, it looks like. Yeah. And then
none of those are in use.
Yeah, okay. So there's
we have a furnace here, and this is where the original stove was. You can see the chimney up there.
Yeah.
A potbelly type
Yes,
stove.
it was in that corner.
Yeah. There's a lovely piano that has a note on it that I can't read, but probably says, "Please do not play the piano," is what I'm going to guess.
Yes.
That is what it says. I can't tell you how many pianos I see that have notes associated with them. That must be something that, like, I would be terrified to touch a piano that's not mine, but did have permission to use, and especially because it's a very intimidating instrument. Like, you can't just, it's not like a guitar that you could strum, and like even if you don't really know what you're doing, it sounds okay. Like a piano, you have to know the keys, or it sounds horrible. So
well, and I imagine that being in this climate of temperature changes and humidity, not only not in tune, but there's probably parts inside that are very fragile or damaged because of that.
Sure. Well, you want to take us back into the history, Peggy?
Okay, I will.
So we had just settled.
John Mark and his son Alexander arrived, plus daughters and their husbands. They all, in those days, in the 1840s, they would have just come in and claimed land.
Right.
By 1850, the donation land claim went into act, and so then they actually could formally claim 320 acres if they were single or a widow, which was the first time women could own land in the whole nation.
That's wonderful.
Or if they were married, then 640 acres. And that when John Mark
and Canby was formed out of a land claim like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
From the Lee family.
Yeah, and a couple others. Yes. And so then in 1879, Alexander deeded these 2 acres to the school district so they could build a building for a school and religious purposes, and a church. In 1879, Alexander Mark deeded 2 acres of this land where we are today to school district number 38. They initially built a log schoolhouse. It was also used for religious purposes for the family and immediate neighbors, which was pretty standard.
Yeah. It's interesting in that time because obviously there were no unified school districts. I mean, it's kind of like each land claim or each very small community had to have their own school if they wanted it, and many did. I mean, it was something that was seen as important in that time.
Right.
Yeah.
Most of the settlers were educated. Most of them wanted to continue that. I mean, the people that had the means to come to Oregon had had some wealth on their own, had some work ethic, whatever it needed. So most of them came here wanting to form that better life. Sure. So that was getting an education was important to them. Sure. And there were
That's interesting. That's something, I don't mean to interrupt, I'm sorry, but yeah, that is interesting because you kind of think of these pioneers as these very rugged, outdoorsy, could work with their hands, and obviously they could, but you don't necessarily always remember or think that they were educated. A lot of them came from large cities to come out here to start a new life, so yeah.
And this was the generation after the mountain men, trappers, right, who would have been more of the outdoorsmen. Right. This was a generation looking for a new life, better life for their family, oftentimes for economic reasons, oftentimes for religious reasons. And idealistic, very idealistic crowd that came out. Yeah. So I just lost my train of thought there.
How much do we know about John Mark and the person that he was and his values, his things?
There's some. I don't have it with me. Okay. But we do have some history on him as a person. Yeah. I don't know how much. It's harder to find. Yeah. But
this was 170 years ago at this point. Yeah.
So they did build a log schoolhouse here, and then right around the turn of the century, 1893, they deeded some land to have a road so they could actually get into the school.
Good idea.
And then they built this building. The lumber was milled down at Cole's sawmill, which was on the south bank of the Moala River. Island Park was down there just before Goods Bridge. Okay. So, and it would have been on this side of the river. Cool. And the school districts. The schools did have districts. There was an organized pattern to the country schools. Yeah. So they weren't really towns at that point, but Crossroads, Yoder had one. That was actually called Evergreen School, and Meridian, Lone Elder, Mundorf School, which is on 13th. So, there were quite a few of the little one-room schoolhouses. EB School was probably the closest one out here, EB and Meridian. Maxburg.
Yeah, we've been doing a historical series, actually, on the Canby School District, and I've seen a lot of those names. The original Canby Union High School District formed out of 16. It's crazy to think that at one point there were that many individual school districts in just what's now the Canby School District.
Right, and this would have been one of those 16.
Yes, it was. I remember Mark Prairie being one of those.
An aside, have you looked at Myra Weston's research at the Depot Museum?
Some of it, yes.
Okay, because she was in the process of writing a book, and her chapter on schools, she had most of that research compiled.
Yes, yeah.
There's a lot there.
I've seen some of her work on the schools.
So anyway, in 1946 is when they started consolidating. So this particular school consolidated with Canby schools at that point. A lot of that was transportation based. Yeah. So now the kids could get into Canby to go to school. So they didn't need to have the schools quite so frequent in the countryside. And at that point, the family members who had deeded the property, rather than just reverting the land, the land reverted to the heirs. So the land reverted to the family members, Mark family. Yeah. And there were still, the next generation was still living. So we actually have those deeds. We have the letters that the family wrote to give this land to what they called a community club at the time, give the building to perpetuate as a community resource, place to meet. For years, they held, it was social purposes, they held reunions here, wedding receptions. Judy had her bridal shower here. Yeah.
4-H.
4-H meetings.
All of these plaques are 4-H club.
Yeah. What was the bridal shower like, Judy?
It was so
we have
fun.
Pictures.
I'm sure it was.
Yes.
I'm sure it was a scandalous party. Just knowing Judy. So.
Well, the ladies of the community dressed up like the bride and the groom, and they had the bridesmaids, and it's interesting because Evelyn Carlson was part of that group back then, and she is living in country living right now. She's 97 years old, and she has lots of sweet memories of the schoolhouse and the things that we did.
Oh, that's sweet.
But yeah, we actually wrapped the maypole every May Day here. All the kids in the community, we would be dressed in crepe paper dresses, and out in the front yard, we would wrap the maypole.
Well, what is that tradition, wrapping the maypole? What is that about?
It's, I think it's a German tradition, because if you go to Oktoberfest, they have the wrapping of the maypole. So it was fun. I was sad to see that tradition disappear because us kids loved it.
And it literally just what it sounds like. You go out and wrap crepe paper, I guess, around the pole. Okay.
Or ribbons in the early days. You can find some lovely old photos of a lot of communities doing it. And the kids walked opposite ways and wove themselves around.
To kind of braid it a little bit.
Yes, around the maypole.
And they're usually in their best dresses.
I'd love to see that.
It's a German tradition.
That one up.
And a lot of the pioneers in this area were German ancestors.
Oh, you didn't have to speak English in Canby. You could speak German and get by.
Interesting.
Even Maxburg Church was in German services for years.
I've heard that, yes. I need to do a story on that at some point.
Yeah, that's a good one.
What was I assume maybe your bridal shower was in summer or spring?
Summer.
Yeah, would it get hot in here?
It got warm.
But
with the trees, it keeps it quite nice, really.
Interesting.
And the high ceilings, I don't remember it being hot in here in the summer. It does get a bit chilly in the winter if they don't get the furnace going early enough. So.
I would imagine that as well. I presumed that Judy's bridal shower wasn't in the winter.
No, it was in the summer.
And over the years, Peggy, you mentioned that there were things that you would bring your kids, or should I say drag your kids to?
Yes, we got involved in the late 80s, early 90s when we moved. We're just outside of the Mark Prairie School District, but I am in a historic house. The people that grew up in our house actually went to Maxburg School.
Interesting.
We were at the edge of the school borders, boundaries there. But there would be 30 people here at a potluck. And it was mostly neighbors and former neighbors, people that had moved out of the area would come back to see family and friends. And so I brought my kids to Vesta Mark's 90th birthday party, and they were pretty in awe, and I guess we figured out that would have been in 1991. So they were impressed. But there were quite a few kids that came, quite a few older, grandparent-ish age parents or adults that were here. But it was a good group, and I was involved in particular because they'd gotten a block grant to restore the south side of the building.
Oh, cool.
Because that's the side that takes the weather, and they had actually just covered it with sheet metal to protect it, corrugated metal. And so I helped them work through the requirements and the design and the materials and all that of the block grant.
It can be a little confusing, those grant requirements.
And the preservation standards to meet too. So, and it was dedicated as a county landmark in the county historic landmark, probably the mid 80s. And then they were actually awarded a bronze plaque that's over there. In the early 2000s, there was a group of several of the country schools that were being well preserved were awarded those by Clackamas County.
It says circa 1900 vernacular?
Vernacular just means it's the standard style of the region. It's not a distinctive craftsman style or Victorian style.
Is this one of the few one-room schoolhouses from the era that's still standing?
There's more. There's probably a dozen throughout the county, maybe a little bit more. A couple of them have been really restored. Poor Mundorf is in sad shape.
There's one. Is Mundorf the one that's over on Territorial?
No, Mundorf is on 13th, and Mundorf has been used to store hay for years, and it's leaning. 13th used to be called Mundorf Road. And Riverside is the one on Territorial, and it's been moved a couple of times and now completely restored as a private home. I'll say Hope School. There's one outside of Oregon City that's a home. Meridian School is similar to this, kind of in a little, kind of in transition. So Lone Elder School was just torn down, and that was owned by the school district, and that was quite unfortunate because there were reasons they should have kept those.
We're going to take a quick break to hear from a couple of our sponsors. When we come back, we'll bring you more of the remarkable history of the Mark Prairie School building, what's being done to save it, and how you can help.
Are you a small business owner or maybe thinking of investing in yourself with your very own startup? Awesome! Now all you have to do is reach potential customers at a time when consumers have never been more fragmented, more distracted, or more difficult to reach. If that sounds hard, believe me, it is. That's why I make Frankie do it.
Carrie and her team at Promotional Strategies offer strategic, purposeful solutions to build your brand with lasting promotional items that make sense for you and your company. They are creative geniuses who will deliver advertisements that people actually thank you for and will use every day. We've tried other sellers, and we trust Carrie to provide high-quality branded items that we can be proud of. Find them at 695 Southeast 1st Avenue in Canby or online at ps266swag.com. You know, Halloween will be here before you know it. Heck, the decorations are already in the stores. So I've got a scary good deal for you. DirectLink is offering 50% off their blazing fast internet speeds now through All Hallows Eve. Not only will you get a sweet candy corn of a deal, but every one of their broadband connections comes with unlimited data, free, and that's no trick. So switch to DirectLink to stream and surf as much as you like. Plus, take advantage of free Wi-Fi home networking for 6 months with free installation of commercial-grade Wi-Fi equipment that ensures your entire home has the strongest, most consistent signal in every room. Talk about a treat. Call 503-266-8111 or visit directlink.coop for blazing fast internet. The one that was in Waite Park at one point?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was originally out Holly, close to the ferry, and then it was moved into
the river.
Close to the river, exactly. There are still 2 big pine trees that were on Holly when you're driving towards the river on the right, and that school was at the end of that drive. And
I love
then,
this. Yeah.
And then it was moved to Waite Park
to be the first high school, I think.
No, just to protect it. Just to, and I think it was just used as a community building. I don't think
actually
it was
used by the schools. Oh.
I don't remember that. No, it would have been early. It would have been the 20s or 30s because Frank Dodge moved it, and he lived on Territorial and built quite a few of the buildings. He built where Backstop is. He built the Masonic Hall. So, and then they moved it to Riverside, and it was a community club for a while, and it's been privately owned for a long time, at least 25 or probably 30 years it's been privately owned.
I almost think that Frank Dodge was involved in building one of the early Canby ferries.
Probably.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
The main builder in the
awesome.
community.
Yeah,
so,
I need to do a story on him at some point.
I thought his house was still on Territorial, but I didn't see it when I looked for it.
You're just giving me a lot more work. I think I get out of here.
I know way too much. Too much about local history.
Cool. Well, do you have more to tell us from the history, or should we move on to kind of what's going on now?
I will say in 1979 they celebrated 100 years of the district, and they had a big reunion here, and former students came, and so they had a big event for that. And the Mark family has continued to have an annual reunion here every single summer.
Yeah, it just happened right at the end of July.
Yeah,
right.
Yes.
Yeah. What are those like? Big parties like the bridal shower, just scandalous. Everyone wears crepe dresses.
I didn't see any crepe dresses.
No.
Well, and there's Mark family descendants and spread mostly along the West Coast, but California to Canada, and
yes,
and it's a variety.
All the Canadians come down, and so we have a fun time visiting.
Yeah. That's great.
And that's mainly what it is to just eat together, have a big potluck.
Yeah.
The kids are playing outside, and then we usually gather. I say we because I'm part of the family.
Yeah.
But we gather and do cleanup here.
Oh,
and, they did a lot that day. Clean the insides and cleaned out a lot of cobwebs in the windows and cleaned up the yard. And then the kids are always having fun playing.
Sure.
And usually on Sunday there's a church service early in the morning, and then we gather for lunch, potluck, and then have a family business meeting.
Interesting.
So
a lot of that stuff happened right here in the schoolhouse or outside, or
both.
Yeah.
Depends on the weather. If it's too hot, we gather here for lunch. And have the meeting out under the trees.
The church service is interesting to me. The faith is still a pretty big part of the family?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Do you bring in a pastor from another church, or does someone in the family do it?
We have, on occasion, Phil Colbaugh from Canby. He used to be a pastor, and a couple of years ago, he helped us. He joined in and led the service and the hymns.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah, it was fun. But
that sounds pretty special. I'd like to maybe see that someday.
We gathered under the trees this year. And just talked about the schoolhouse in general and the grounds and what we can do to bring the love back into the community and the caring for the schoolhouse and the grounds. So it's a good time to be together as a family.
Do you have any traditional dishes that, great grandma's Foley's potato salad that she brings every year, anything like that people look forward to? It's always just a diverse mix.
We had Elsie's potato salad.
A Canby tradition.
A Canby tradition.
It's hard to beat Elsie's potato salad.
It really is. And she actually grew up about 7 miles south of here.
Well, legend has it, Mark Prairie did join Canby just because of that potato salad. So that's
the legend?
That's finally what caused that to happen. So. Cool. Well, thank you so much for telling me about what that's like. That's really interesting to me. And we have a bit of news. You guys are kind of reorganizing the Mark Prairie Historical Society with renewed vigor and renewed energy to protect and preserve this history, this wonderful site. Tell us about it.
The group of volunteers that were maintaining the building had shrunk. It was a small handful of people that were trying to keep projects going.
They were only like 3 foot tall at that point. Oh, you don't mean shrunk like that.
I don't mean shrunk that way.
Sorry.
Not the little people. But they were able to, Vestamark did leave a trust, so they were able to use that money to re-roof. And so some of the important maintenance things were
well preserved. Honestly, for a building that's 120 years old.
Right. Some of those things they were able to continue doing, but they were struggling having members involved. And then it became that they unfortunately lost their tax exempt status. So then they had property taxes that became quite a burden. Because I'm a neighbor, because I'd been involved, I started trying to help them to revitalize. And also, I know that this particular part, then what would now be the 91 school district, is really growing with families. So we don't have construction out here, but we do have a lot of turnover, and a lot of the new families have children. So it's nice to see that next generation settling again. Our particular neighborhood, we had 10 kids 25 years ago, and then we had a decade of none, and now we're back to 14 kids maybe. So I know at 91 last year they went from I think 1 kindergarten class to 3 all of a sudden because they had so many new children arrive.
Well, I know my house keeps filling up with kids. I don't know how that happens.
You're the right generation for
guess.
So the hope was to try and get more of those families involved, and thinking that there was probably the ability to do that, and I still think there is. But at this point, there's a new board in place. There are, I think you're up to 60 members. 62 new members. So there's a lot of promise for the future, and a lot of projects. So needing to rewrite bylaws and figure out the property tax and insurance and restoration. One of my goals is to get a preservation plan for the building, so we kind of have a roadmap of what steps are prioritized here as we start moving forward with work. So all that will also mean fundraising too.
For sure. Can anyone join or be part of these efforts? Do they have to live in a particular place or show you a birth certificate that proves they're part of the Mark family?
Nope.
Just folks that are interested in the preservation efforts of the history of this area.
Yes, that's all it takes. So we can be reached just by looking at our website. There's a contact on there.
Is that the Mark Heritage?
No, it's Mark Prairie Historical Society.org.
Okay.
Right. And there is a contact form on there, and a place for donations.
Put that plug in there.
We put that plug in there.
Oz,
we'll accept any amount of donation.
Wonderful.
Well, and it used to be that the membership was very restricted. You had to live in the school district boundaries, and you had to be voted to be a member, and that was working against the building the organization. So opening that up has helped a lot. And right now dues are a whopping $10 a year.
Oh, wow.
So they went up from $3 a year.
Oh, wow. More than triple.
Inflation,
Yes.
Yeah.
$3 does not go as far as it did in the 1940s.
So one of the advantages is that the Cub Scouts have been using the site quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
And so that is wonderful to have use of the site. They have some campouts, they have activities here. They have I think they have a radio club meeting here.
Interesting.
So it's nice to be able to use that, and we hope to get 4-H groups back in and local neighbors who want a place for their family gathering or whatever it might be. So
wonderful.
We're not quite up to speed yet to think weddings or events like that, but ideally.
Someday,
yeah.
I mean, Judy did it. Cool. Anything else to add before we go?
I have to say, too, that the site here is pretty amazing.
It is.
The 2 acres, and it still has the oak trees, and it still has the lovely little 2-lane, 2-wagon wheel drive coming up to the school.
Very quaint sign, when I was driving up, I felt a little flutter in my heart, just like this is just so, there's just something, this is just so perfect, like you really did feel like you were stepping back into history. So, what about you, Judy? Anything else?
Well, we plan to have some open houses coming up in the near future so that people can actually see the schoolhouse and see how much we love the grounds and the building.
Wonderful. And you'll be putting out details to that
yes, we will.
Website, and you have a Facebook page as well.
Right.
Yeah. So follow those. And we can help share that as well if you guys stay tuned to the podcast. So just want to thank you guys so much for taking the time out to do this interview and tell me some of the history of this wonderful place. One thing that the Canby Now podcast is about, we want to care about the things that people in Canby care about in the Canby area. And when you're in this building and you see the care and the love that has gone into it over the years, like it comes out through the floor, through the walls. You can see the care that's been put into it over the years, and we just appreciate you letting us be a little part of that. So
thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
This week, Clackamas County awarded a total of $250,000 to 38 local nonprofits and service organizations through its 2019 Small Grants Program. Now, in its 11th year, this critical program helps local nonprofits that provide services to vulnerable populations living in Clackamas County. One of the local organizations receiving funding was the Canby Center, who was awarded a grant of $12,114 for a project that has been needed for some time. This week, we spoke with Ray Keene, director of the Canby Center, who tells us all about it.
Can you start by just telling us a little bit about the scope of the project that this grant is going to help address?
Absolutely. So the project really helps us with our food and clothing programs. So what it does is helps us to replace 2 doors that are not really sufficient for the purposes we've been using them for. We have a garage roll-up door that goes into our main sorting space for food and clothing. And that roll-up door is it's not insulated. We needed to put several $100s into it to keep it going last year, just from a maintenance perspective. The spring was broken and some of the rollers needed to be replaced. And so it's kind of become a bit of a liability. And we're going to replace that with an insulated door that's more automatic. It'll have better security, and it will be a better process for people moving in and out.
Gotcha.
And then we're also replacing the door that comes from our sorting area into our larger space, and we move a lot of food through that door, but it's a narrow passageway right now, what you'd call a man door. It's about probably 32 inches wide. It's just barely wide enough for us to squeeze our food carts through, but it's challenging to do so. And what we're going to do there is replace that with a more of a swing door like you might see in a restaurant or something like that, which will be a sound and temperature barrier, but will also let people move through with the carts and heavy items a lot easier than they do now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the grant from the county says that it's going to help the Canby Center with increased security and temperature and pest control, which you described, but it sounds like it's also just kind of making things a lot easier in terms of providing the service that you do for vulnerable residents in our population.
It definitely will. So, for example, since January through till today, October 16th, 204,000 pounds of food has been given and has moved through that space, in that storage space, as well as 75,000 pounds of clothing. 75,817 pounds so far through today. So, it's so much happens in that space, plus our Backpack Buddies program where we do prepare about 8,000 food packs for kids in the Canby School District through the school year. So that ends up serving somewhere between 230, 250 children who are food insecure in Canby.
Wow.
All that happens in that same space where those doors are going to be replaced. So
you got to have good doors.
It's an important part. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Not only just to protect the investment and the donations that folks have made in the community and to ensure that the folks who need this get it, but also just to make things easier for the people moving back and forth between those rooms, as you've mentioned. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
There's definitely some times where that space gets really, really busy and crowded, and having the access
I've
point.
seen some of your videos.
Yeah, right? Yes. So, some of the access point stuff can be really a challenge, especially if you're trying to kind of slide people through a very narrow entryway.
Cool. Well, this grant was through the county's Small Grants Program, which has been going for over 10 years. This is the 11th consecutive year that they've done this. Has the Canby Center been a recipient of a grant from them before?
Yes, we have. Two recent ones, which were a huge, huge help to us. Some people may see around town our refrigerated van that we use to pick up some of that 200,000 pounds of food. So they were helpful for us this last year in purchasing that van, along with many, many other foundations and individuals in our community, as well as churches and service clubs who helped to purchase the van. And then they also helped us with our kitchen remodel and expansion this last about a year and a half, 2 years ago. So they were involved in that process and helping us prepare the space for healthy cooking classes and to be able to prepare meals for anyone in the community Monday through Thursday for free. So we do free lunch Monday through Thursday for anyone who can use that support. So like, for example, yesterday, I think we had about 45 people come through for lunch, and it's just a great way to be able to support those who can use a little bit of extra help.
That's awesome. One last thing I wanted to ask you about, Ray. So as part of this specific round of grant funding that the county did, they were targeting what they call the Community Prosperity Collaborative, which includes the communities of Canby, Estacada, and Milwaukee. So they were really wanting to target those specific areas. Can you kind of explain why or what that's all about?
Yeah, I think we've been involved with that collaborative a little bit from the early stages on through to where they are today. And basically what they're trying to do is take a look at particularly the disparities of wealth that can be there, and where you have some pockets of a community that may be experiencing greater levels of poverty. And then how do we begin to address that? Not just from a short-term perspective of, hey, let's be sure we're feeding people today, which is something we definitely are involved with at the Canby Center. But from a long-term perspective, how do we begin to address this to get at the systemic issues that might be there that are maybe helping people stay in the place that they are and not allowing them to move forward? So, for example, one of the things that we do at the center that kind of addresses the long-term issue is that we have our participants in our Thriving Together program take a finance class in partnership with Clackamas Federal Credit Union, who comes in and teaches the class. And that's a requirement of joining our Thriving Together program within the first year. So the collaborative is looking at long-term solutions like that and how you would kind of bake that into those communities so that, it's not just looking at them and saying, okay, this is a poor part of the Portland metro area, but saying, how do we really get at the challenges that are here from a long-term perspective and help people who may have been stuck for some time to really be able to take some steps forward.
I love that. I love the long-term approach as well, that it's not just, here's a handout that'll get you to the next week, but then the next week, that handout's not going to be here and you're in the exact same place. Right. You know what I mean? So,
exactly. We need both. I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. People really need both. They need an opportunity to be able to make progress, and they need, sometimes they just need the tangible help today. So it is both. And not every organization, not necessarily, every nonprofit is going to focus on both, but I think it's a really important thing for us to consider how we can help even today in a way that strengthens dignity. So, for example, Clackamas County, I mentioned, helped with our kitchen project. And an important part of that kitchen project was bringing the kitchen up to a level of commercial grade kitchen that actually would help strengthen people's dignity when they come in for a meal and not reduce it, right? Because there is a way to stand in line in a soup kitchen and you can be fed in your belly, but your heart kind of sinks because you feel less for being there. When people come in now to our kitchen and they receive lunch, it's a pretty cool deal, I mean, they're going to get healthy food, yes, but they're also going to be, in a space that's well lit. The countertops are nice. Things are clean. It's bright. It's not a dark corner somewhere where they feel like they're less for being here. They kind of get the sort of experience you would have if you went to a nice coffee shop or someplace like that. So strengthening human dignity is a super important part long-term of addressing poverty, and doing the short-term help in a way that doesn't diminish people's dignity is key in that.
Well, I do drink my coffee in a dark corner in a dark cave, but that's just because I'm an addict and I drink way too much of it. But I do think that's really cool that the Canby Center provides that and helps folks who need it, but in a way that also enables us to all preserve that human dignity that we all possess, regardless of what our current circumstances may be. Well, Ray, it's always a joy to have you on the Canby Now podcast. Thanks so much for your time, and congratulations on the new grant, and just thanks to you and your team and all your volunteers for all that you do in our community.
Really appreciate the time. Thanks for the call.
I am not a golfer. I mean, I'm not a good golfer. So when I want to play a few rounds, I head over to Frontier Golf Course. They're family-owned, family-friendly 9-hole course with beautiful scenery. And they let me rent clubs or bring my own. And they don't judge me for my slices and hacks. Or, my language.
Frontier Golf Course is a great place to meet your buddies and have a drink, or bring your kids along. They're located on Holly Street, just north of town. If you hit the ferry, you've gone too far.
Also, please don't hit the ferry.
Yeah, please don't. But do ask them about Farley the Goat. They love that. Frontier prides itself on being the best value course you'll find in the area. If you haven't been by in a while, you've got to come check out what the new owners have done. Frontier Golf Course. It's a new frontier.
The Canby Now podcast is a production of Now Hear This Studios, Canby's locally owned full-service audio, video, and media production company. Our mission is to produce the best content in the universe, and we'd love to help you do it. Find us online at nhtstudios.com.
Canby Now podcast is dedicated to preserving independent local journalism and redefining local news with our fun, fresh, and energetic brand of storytelling. Our sincere thanks to our local sponsors who make this show possible. Please show your appreciation by supporting the small businesses who support us.
Huge thank you as well to our supporters on Patreon. We rely on your monthly contributions to continue to do this work that we seriously love. For information on how you can become one of the coolest people in the world,
a patron of the Canby Now podcast, visit cambynowpod.com/plus.